Breaking news! The clock is ticking for the Philadelphia Eagles, and free agency is getting closer. We have some news on Miles Garrett, and believe me, things are getting heated behind the scenes. I want to hear from you, Eagles fan. If you were Howie, would you sign Garrett? What are the pros and cons? Comment below. And don't forget to hashtag it, GOBIRDS. And of course, if you're a true Eagles fan, make sure you hit that like button. Now, I want you to think with me. Picture this, one of the most dominant pass rushers in the NFL, a future Hall of Famer still in his prime, practically begging to leave a franchise that has done nothing but waste his talent. And here's where things get wild. The Browns are refusing to even consider the idea. This is where the Eagles could step in, and if Howie Roseman plays his cards right, we could see one of the greatest defensive acquisitions in franchise history. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's break it down. Miles Garrett requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns the week of the Super Bowl. The Eagles were focused on beating the Kansas City Chiefs, while behind the scenes, one of the game's most feared edge rushers was finally getting tired. Can you blame him? Since being drafted number 1st overall in 2017, Garrett has only been part of 2 winning seasons and has a single playoff win to his name. This isn't a faded veteran looking for a payday. This is a generational talent stuck in a franchise that refuses to take the steps necessary to become a true contender. And here's where things get even crazier. Browns GM Andrew Berry, who by the way used to work under Howie Roseman, has repeatedly said, "We're not trading Garrett." Cleveland has dug in, refusing to listen to offers, even after Garrett made it clear he will not sign an extension. Then this morning, another bombshell. Garrett requested a meeting with Browns owner Jimmy Haslam to discuss the situation. Haslam, he refused to even meet with him. Think about that. One of your franchise's all-time great players, a guy who has given everything to your team, wants to have a conversation, and you won't even take his call? That would never happen in Philadelphia. Jeffrey Lurie would never let a situation get to this point. He's involved, he communicates, and he makes the moves necessary to win. Look at what he just did with Saquon Barkley. That wasn't just a Howie Roseman move. That was Lurie making sure the guy who helped deliver another Super Bowl was taken care of. That's how winning organizations operate. Meanwhile, Cleveland is out here treating its best player like an afterthought. So what should the Eagles do? Howie Roseman has made it clear over the years that he values pass rushers. It's one of the reasons Philadelphia has been a perennial contender. And let's be honest, Garrett would be a perfect fit in this system. But the question is, what would it take to get him? The Browns are obviously trying to act like they won't trade him, but is that just posturing to drive up the price? You have to think that if the right offer comes in, maybe a first and a second or multiple high picks, they'd have to at least consider it. And from the Eagles' perspective, wouldn't that be worth it? You're getting a game wrecker, a guy who instantly makes your defense one of the scariest in the league. Pair him with Jalen Carter and Hassan Reddick, that's a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. And if the Garrett trade doesn't materialize, there's another name on the market, Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals have given him permission to seek a trade, and while he might not be on Garrett's level, he's been one of the most productive edge rushers in the league over the last 2 seasons, racking up 35 sacks. His price tag would be lower, but the impact would still be massive. The Eagles are always looking to add firepower in the trenches. Could Hendrickson be the answer if Garrett isn't an option? Now, we also have to talk about the Darius Slay drama. If you've been on Eagles Twitter this week, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It started when Slay said on his podcast that Reed Blankenship is the next leader of the secondary. That alone wouldn't have been a big deal, except he didn't mention C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who has been the heart and soul of this defense when he's been on the field. C.J. didn't take that well, and it didn't take long before things started to spiral.
Then, Slay made another misstep. When asked to name the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, he mentioned Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson, but left out Jalen Hurts. Yeah, you heard that right. Your team captain, one of the faces of the franchise, didn't include his own quarterback in the conversation. Naturally, Eagles fans weren't happy, and when I called Slay out on it, he reached out to me directly. He insisted he never said Hurts wasn't elite. But let's be real, when you list the top quarterbacks and leave your own guy off, that says something. Whether he meant it or not, it's not a good look, and it's not the first time he's had some questionable moments like this. Look, I respect Slay. He's been an incredible player, a 6-time Pro Bowler, a key part of our defense. But he has to be more aware of how his words are going to be received, especially in a city like Philadelphia, where fans hold their players accountable. If he wants to get into media after his playing days are over, he needs to understand that everything he says will be scrutinized. You can't slip up like this and expect people not to notice. So now, I want to hear from you. Should the Eagles go all in on Miles Garrett? Would you rather see them target Trey Hendrickson? And what do you make of the Darius Slay situation? Was this just a misunderstanding, or does he need to be more careful with his words? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And let's not forget, this isn't just about the names on the roster. This is about setting the tone for the future. The Eagles have been one of the most successful franchises in the league over the last 2 decades because they understand how to build a winning culture. That means knowing when to move on from players, when to invest big, and when to double down on your stars. Howie Roseman has shown time and time again that he's willing to make aggressive moves when the moment calls for it. And right now, the moment is calling. Look at what happened in 2022 when Roseman pulled off the A.J. Brown trade. People thought it was a risk at the time, giving up a first-round pick and then paying a huge contract. But that move turned the Eagles' offense into one of the most dangerous units in the NFL and helped propel them to the Super Bowl. A move for Miles Garrett would have the same kind of impact, but this time on the defensive side of the ball. Imagine facing an Eagles front that features Garrett, Jalen Carter, Haason Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Jordan Davis. Quarterbacks wouldn't stand a chance. And in a league that's becoming more and more dependent on elite quarterback play, the best way to counter that is by building a defense that can make life miserable for those quarterbacks. That's exactly what Roseman has prioritized over the years, and that's why this move makes so much sense. But let's play devil's advocate here. What if the price is just too high? What if Cleveland demands multiple first-round picks? Or what if Garrett isn't truly available? That's where Trey Hendrickson comes into play. He may not be as dominant as Garrett, but his numbers speak for themselves. 35 sacks in the last 2 seasons, the most of any player in the league. He's been durable, he's disruptive, and most importantly, he's available. The Bengals are in a tough financial situation. They're about to give Jamar Chase a massive extension. They placed the franchise tag on T. Higgins. Joe Burrow's contract is already on the books. Something's got to give, and right now, it looks like Hendrickson might be the odd man out. That opens the door for a team like Philadelphia to swoop in and add another top-tier pass rusher without giving up the kind of draft capital that would be needed for Garrett. Either way, the Eagles need to make a move. The NFC is wide open. The 49ers will be a threat again, but beyond that, the Lions are rising, but they're improving. The Cowboys? They'll be good in the regular season, but always find a way to collapse when it matters most. If the Eagles play this right, they could put themselves in position for another deep playoff run, and the key to that will be building an elite pass rush. And then there's the Slay situation, which still has this fan base fired up. Look, no one is saying Slay isn't a great player. No one is saying he hasn't been an important leader on this team. But what he's done over the past week is exactly the kind of thing that creates unnecessary distractions. So here's the question, Eagles fans. Would you trade for Miles Garrett? Is the price worth it to bring in one of the most dominant defenders in the game? Or do you think Trey Hendrickson is the smarter move, given his production and lower cost? And what about Slay? Do you think this is just a misunderstanding? Or do you think he's out of line for how he's handled things? Should the Eagles be concerned about chemistry in the locker room moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get this conversation going. And as always, fly Eagles fly.